The morning sunlight streamed through the half-drawn curtains of the Carter household. Sophia Carter sat at the edge of her bed, her phone clutched tightly in her hands. The screen displayed a simple message from Ethan. Flight delayed again. Will call when I land. She sighed, her chest tightening. This wasn't the first time. Nor would it be the last. Ethan's job as a construction engineer often meant days, sometimes weeks, of separation. What had once been a minor inconvenience during the early days of their marriage now felt like an unbridgeable chasm. Downstairs, Lila's giggles echoed through the house as she played with her favorite teddy bear. Sophia forced a smile as she descended the stairs. The sight of her daughter's joy was a small consolation, a reminder of the love she still had in her life. Morning, sweetheart. What are we making today? Sophia asked, ruffling Lila's curls as she joined her in the kitchen. Pancakes. Lila beamed, her eyes lighting up. Pancakes it is, Sophia replied, grabbing the ingredients from the pantry. As she whisked the batter, her mind wandered back to the days when Ethan would be by her side, flipping pancakes with Lila and making them laugh with his terrible jokes. But now, it was just her, always her. The seminar was held in a sleek, modern conference room on the 15th floor of a downtown skyscraper. Sophia adjusted her blazer, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. These leadership seminars were often predictable, filled with buzzwords and networking sessions that rarely led anywhere meaningful. Sophia Carter, right? The voice was deep, smooth, and carried a hint of curiosity. She turned to see a man standing a few feet away, his hand outstretched. He was tall, with sharp features and a disarming smile. Yes, she replied, shaking his hand. And you are? Adrian Bennett. I'm one of the speakers today. He gestured to the schedule in her hand. Session on strategic leadership at 2 p.m. Hope you'll find it interesting. Sophia nodded politely, looking forward to it. Throughout the seminar, Adrian's charisma was undeniable. He spoke with a confidence that commanded the room, weaving anecdotes and humor into his presentation. Sophia found herself leaning forward, captivated not just by his words but by the way he carried himself, self-assured, yet approachable. At lunch, their paths crossed again. They ended up sitting at the same table, exchanging pleasantries that soon turned into a genuine conversation about work challenges and personal growth. You have a daughter? Adrian asked, his tone warm. Yes, Lila. She's 7, Sophia replied, smiling at the thought of her little girl. She's lucky to have you, Adrian said, his eyes sincere. It's not easy balancing work and family. Sophia felt a flicker of gratitude. It had been a long time since someone acknowledged her efforts. Back home, Sophia found herself thinking about Adrian more than she wanted to admit. It wasn't attraction, at least not at first. It was the ease of their conversation. The way he seemed to understand her struggles without judgment. Days turned into weeks, and their occasional work emails began to include personal tidbits. Adrian would ask how her day was going, share a joke, or recommend a book. It was harmless, she told herself, just two professionals sharing a connection. But one night, as she lay in bed scrolling through their messages, she felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Adrian had sent her a simple text. Hope you're doing okay. You deserve to be happy. It was a small gesture, but it lingered in her mind long after she turned off the light. Ethan finally returned home one weekend. His suitcase wheeled into the living room with a dull thud. Lila ran to him, her arms wide open, while Sophia hung back, watching the reunion with mixed emotions. Hey, Soph, Ethan said, pulling her into a quick hug. His embrace felt distant, mechanical. As the weekend unfolded, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling of disconnection. Their conversations were brief and practical, about bills, schedules, and Lila's school projects. There was no warmth, no depth. On Sunday night, as Ethan packed his suitcase for another trip, Sophia sat on the edge of their bed, her heart heavy. Do you ever feel like we're just existing? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan looked up, startled. What do you mean? I don't know. Like we're roommates, not partners. Ethan frowned. Soph, we've talked about this. My job is demanding, but it's for us, for our family. Sophia nodded, swallowing her frustration. He didn't get it. He never did. That night, as Ethan slept beside her, Sophia reached for her phone. Adrian's name flashed on the screen. And without hesitation, she typed, "Are you awake?" His reply came almost instantly, "Always for you." The messages between Sophia and Adrian became a nightly ritual. At first, they revolved around work, a deal gone wrong, an irritating client, or the endless monotony of meetings. But slowly, they drifted into more personal territory. Adrian had a way of making Sophia feel seen. When she told him about Lila's latest art project, he listened with genuine interest, asking questions that Ethan never seemed to think of. When she shared her frustrations about juggling work and motherhood, he responded with empathy, not solutions or dismissive reassurances. One evening, as she sat in the quiet of her kitchen after putting Lila to bed, Sophia sent Adrian a message she had been holding back. "I don't think I've been truly happy in years." The three dots indicating Adrian's reply appeared and disappeared several times before his response came. "Why do you say that?" Sophia hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, almost as if the words had been waiting to escape, she typed, "I feel invisible. Like no one really knows me anymore." This time, Adrian's reply was immediate, "I see you. Sophia, you're extraordinary." Her breath caught. It wasn't just the words, it was the feeling they evoked. For the first time in years, she felt valued, understood, and alive. Sophia knew she was walking a fine line. Adrian's messages filled a void she hadn't even realized was so vast. But guilt nipped at her heels. She told herself it was harmless, just words on a screen. Nothing physical, nothing real, but her heart betrayed her. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk, her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. "Let's have coffee." Just as friends. She stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. Meeting him in person felt like crossing an invisible boundary. But a part of her wanted to say yes. She wanted to see if the connection they shared in messages felt the same in real life. After minutes that felt like hours, she replied, "I don't think that's a good idea." Adrian didn't push. His response was simple, "I understand. But if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." The restraint in his message only deepened her feelings. He respected her boundaries, and yet she couldn't stop thinking about what might happen if she let those boundaries slip. Ethan's next trip home was shorter than usual. He arrived late on a Friday night. Exhausted and irritable, Sophia tried to bridge the gap between them, making his favorite dinner and suggesting they watch a movie together. But he waved her off, muttering about an early morning meeting. As he unpacked his suitcase, Sophia noticed a faint scent on his shirt, a blend of perfume and something else she couldn't place. She didn't ask about it, though the question burned on her tongue. Instead, she buried her unease and turned her attention to Lila. They spent Saturday at the park, laughing and chasing each other through the crisp autumn leaves. Ethan stayed home, glued to his laptop, barely acknowledging their absence. That night, as Sophia lay in bed beside him, she scrolled through her messages with Adrian. She didn't send anything, but just reading their past exchanges brought her a sense of comfort she hadn't felt in years. The turning point came unexpectedly. It was a Wednesday evening, and Sophia was in the middle of helping Lila with her homework when her phone buzzed on the counter. Ethan, who had come home early for once, picked it up without thinking. "Who's Adrian?" he asked, his tone sharp. Sophia froze, her heart pounding. "He's a colleague," she said, keeping her voice steady. Ethan didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes was enough. Later that night, after Lila was asleep, he brought it up again. "I saw the messages, Sophia," he said, his voice low but laced with anger. "Don't try to lie to me." She opened her mouth to explain, but the words caught in her throat. What could she say? That Adrian was just a friend? That his messages meant nothing? Both were lies, and Ethan would see right through them. "It's not what you think," she said finally. "We've just been talking, that's all." "Talking?" Ethan scoffed. "About what?" "About how miserable you are with me. About how he makes you feel better. Do you even hear yourself?" Sophia's chest tightened. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was lonely." And you're never here. So it's my fault now? Ethan snapped, his voice rising. You think I like being away from my family? I'm doing this for us. Sophia, for Lila. And this is how you repay me? Tears blurred her vision. I don't know what you want me to say. I've made a mistake. But it's not what you think. I love you, Ethan. He shook his head, his expression unreadable. I don't know if I can believe that anymore. Ethan left the next morning without a word. For the first time in their marriage, Sophia didn't know if he would come back. Adrian reached out that evening, sensing something was wrong. Are you okay? He asked. Sophia stared at the message, her fingers trembling. She wanted to reply, to pour her heart out to the one person who seemed to understand her. But something held her back. Instead, she turned off her phone and sat in the silence of her living room, tears streaming down her face. She had to make a choice, one that could either salvage her marriage or destroy it entirely. The house felt colder without Ethan's presence. Even when he was away for work, Sophia had always known he would return eventually. Now, with his silence stretching into days, the uncertainty gnawed at her. She busied herself with routines, preparing Lila for school, diving into work, and pretending everything was normal. But every time her phone buzzed, her heart raced, hoping it was Ethan. It rarely was. Adrian's messages sat unopened in her inbox. She hadn't replied since Ethan's departure, trying to put distance between herself and the connection that had sparked so much turmoil. Yet the temptation lingered, an almost magnetic pull to the comfort he offered. That night, as Lila slept peacefully in her room, Sophia sat at the kitchen table, staring at a half-empty glass of wine. She knew she couldn't keep living in limbo. She had to confront the reality of her choices. When Ethan finally called, his voice was colder than she had ever heard it. We need to talk, he said, but not now. I'm not ready. Sophia's stomach churned. Ethan, please, I need you to understand. I made a mistake, but I didn't betray you, not in the way you think. He laughed bitterly. Not in the way I think? Do you even hear yourself? Sophia? Emotional betrayal hurts just as much, if not more. You gave a part of yourself to someone else. And I don't know if I can forgive that. The line went quiet for a moment before he added, I'll come home this weekend. We'll figure out what's next. Sophia didn't sleep that night. Her thoughts spiraled into questions she couldn't answer. Could she convince him to stay? Did she even deserve his forgiveness? And if he left, what would become of their family? Sophia hadn't spoken to Adrian in over a week, but his absence in her life felt palpable. She knew the only way forward was to cut ties completely, no matter how much it hurt. That morning, she typed out a message. Adrian, I can't do this anymore. I need to focus on my family. Thank you for being there when I needed someone. But this has to end. Please don't contact me again. Her thumb hovered over the send button for what felt like an eternity before she pressed it. A single tear slid down her cheek as the message disappeared into the void. Adrian replied almost immediately. I understand. I hope you find the happiness you deserve. Sophia, take care. The finality of his words was both a relief and a heartbreak. For the first time in months, she felt truly alone. Ethan arrived late Friday evening, his expression guarded. Lila ran to him, as always, but Sophia hesitated, unsure of how to greet him. The tension between them was thick, an invisible wall that neither seemed willing to breach. Over dinner, their conversation was stilted, revolving around Lila's schoolwork and Ethan's latest project. Lila, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between her parents, filled the silences with cheerful chatter. Later, after Lila was asleep, Ethan and Sophia sat across from each other in the living room. The distance between them felt insurmountable. Why? Ethan asked finally, his voice raw. Sophia took a deep breath. Because I was lonely. Because I felt invisible. Ethan, you were always gone, and I didn't know how to reach you. Adrian, he was just someone who listened. That's all. Ethan's jaw tightened. And you think that makes it okay? No, Sophia said quickly. It doesn't, but I need you to know that it was never about replacing you. I love you, Ethan. I always have. He looked at her for a long time, his eyes searching hers for some semblance of truth. I don't know if love is enough anymore. he said quietly. The words hit her like a physical blow. But she refused to give up. Please, Ethan, let me prove to you that it is. The next few weeks were a fragile dance of rebuilding and resisting the urge to fall apart. Ethan stayed, but his walls remained firmly in place. Sophia, determined to bridge the gap between them, made small but consistent efforts to show her commitment. She arranged family outings, cooked his favorite meals, and made a point to listen when he talked about work. It wasn't easy. Ethan's responses were often curt, his demeanor distant, but she didn't give up. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching Lila chase fireflies in the yard, Ethan finally spoke. I don't know if I'll ever forget what you did, he admitted, but I want to try. For Lila, for us. Sophia reached for his hand, her heart swelling with hope. That's all I'm asking for. A chance to make things right. Sophia deleted all of Adrian's messages, his number, and every trace of him from her life. It was a symbolic gesture, but an important one. She couldn't move forward while holding on to the past. She and Ethan began attending counseling sessions together, learning to communicate in ways they hadn't before. The process was slow and often painful, but it brought them closer than they had been in years. For the first time, Sophia allowed herself to hope. Hope that they could not only repair their marriage but build something even stronger from the ashes. Weeks turned into months, and though the wounds were still raw, Sophia and Ethan began to find their footing. Counseling sessions became a space where they could speak openly, even when it hurt. One evening, as they sat in the quiet of the therapist's office, Ethan voiced something that had been lingering in his mind. I want to trust you again, Sophia, he said, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. But I don't know how. Sophia nodded, tears pricking her eyes. I know I broke that trust, Ethan, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild it. Their therapist, Dr. Reed, leaned forward. Trust isn't something that comes back overnight. It's built piece by piece. Through consistency and vulnerability. Both of you have to commit to this process. After the session, Ethan took Sophia's hand as they walked to their car. It was a small gesture, but one that gave her hope. One crisp autumn afternoon, Sophia decided to take Lila to the park. They laughed as they kicked through piles of leaves, their faces flushed with the cool air. As Lila played on the swings, Sophia felt her phone buzz in her pocket. She glanced at the screen and froze. It was Adrian. The message was brief. Sophia, I know we agreed not to talk, but I need to see you. Just once, please. Her heart raced. She hadn't heard from him in months, and part of her had hoped she never would. But the message brought a flood of emotions she thought she had buried. Sophia deleted the message without replying. She couldn't risk undoing the fragile progress she and Ethan had made. Still, the encounter left her shaken, and she spent the rest of the day trying to suppress the nagging thoughts that Adrian's presence stirred. That night, as they sat together in the living room, Ethan seemed distracted. He had been unusually quiet since coming home from work, and Sophia could sense that something was weighing on him. Ethan, is everything okay? She asked cautiously. He hesitated before answering. There's something I need to tell you. Sophia's stomach dropped. What is it? Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. His expression conflicted. A few months ago, I got too close to someone at work. Nothing happened, but there were moments when it could have. Sophia's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. Who? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It doesn't matter, he said quickly. I ended it before it went anywhere. But after everything with you and Adrian, I realized I wasn't as innocent as I wanted to believe. Sophia's emotions swirled in a chaotic mix of anger, relief, and something she couldn't quite name. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want us to have a clean slate, Ethan said. No more secrets. No more pretending we're perfect. I want us to be real. For the first time, Sophia saw her own struggles mirrored in Ethan's eyes. They were both flawed, both human, and both desperately trying to find their way back to each other. The next morning, Sophia found a letter tucked into her bag. It was from Ethan, written in his familiar scrawl. She unfolded it carefully, her hands trembling. Soph, I know I haven't been the husband you needed. I've been distant, focused on work, and blind to your struggles. I didn't see how much you were hurting until it was almost too late. But I love you. I always have, and I want to fight for us. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Please don't give up on me. On us. Ethan. Tears blurred Sophia's vision as she read the letter. It was the first time in years that Ethan had expressed his feelings so openly. She folded the letter carefully and tucked it back into her bag, her heart heavy with a mix of regret and hope. As the months passed, Sophia and Ethan began to rebuild their marriage piece by piece. They made time for each other, setting aside work and distractions to reconnect. Ethan started coming home more often, prioritizing family over his demanding career. Sophia, in turn, worked on being more open about her feelings, sharing her struggles instead of bottling them up. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Sophia reached for Ethan's hand. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said softly. He turned to her, his expression warm. "We didn't give up on each other." Years later, Sophia would look back on that turbulent time in their lives as a turning point. It hadn't been easy, there were still moments of doubt and pain, but they had come out stronger for it. Lila, now a teenager, often teased her parents for being so mushy, but deep down, she admired the love and resilience they had shown. Sophia knew that life would always have its challenges, but she also knew that she and Ethan could face them together. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. The decision to stay together was only the beginning. For months, Sophia and Ethan carefully navigated the fragile landscape of their marriage, learning to trust each other again. It was an uphill battle, one that required patience, vulnerability, and forgiveness. Sophia made a conscious effort to communicate more openly. She told Ethan about her struggles with loneliness, her fears of being an inadequate wife and mother, and the void that Adrian had temporarily filled. In return, Ethan shared his own vulnerabilities, admitting that he had hidden behind his work to avoid dealing with the emotional distance between them. One evening, as they sat across from each other at the dining table, Ethan said, "I want us to have a fresh start, Sophia, but that means no more secrets. Can we promise each other that?" Sophia nodded, her heart swelling with determination. "No more secrets. I promise." Despite her promise, Sophia couldn't completely escape the shadow Adrian had left behind. Although she hadn't contacted him since sending her final message, his presence lingered in her thoughts. What if she had made different choices? What if she had given in to temptation? These questions haunted her, especially on the rare nights when Ethan worked late and the house felt too quiet. During one of their counseling sessions, Dr. Reed asked, "Sophia, have you truly let go of the emotional connection you had with Adrian?" Sophia hesitated. "I think I have, but sometimes I wonder if I only let it go because I had to." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. Dr. Reed leaned forward. "It's natural to feel conflicted, Sophia, but the key to moving forward is not just letting go of the past, it's understanding why you held onto it in the first place." Sophia spent days reflecting on those words. Slowly, she began to see that Adrian had represented something she felt was missing in her life: validation, attention, and a sense of being truly seen. Now that she was working to rebuild those things with Ethan, the weight of Adrian's shadow began to lift. One afternoon, Sophia received an unexpected email. It was from Adrian. Subject: "Just checking in. Hi Sophia, I know we haven't spoken in a long time, and I respect your decision to end things, but I wanted to see how you're doing. I hope you found the happiness you were looking for." Sophia stared at the screen, her emotions swirling. Part of her wanted to reply, to reassure Adrian that she was fine and thank him for what he had meant to her during a difficult time. But another part of her knew that responding, even with the best intentions, would risk reopening old wounds. After a long moment, she deleted the email without replying. She didn't need to look back anymore, her future was with Ethan. With Adrian firmly in the past, Sophia and Ethan began to rediscover the love that had first brought them together. They started going on dates again, something they hadn't done since Lila was born. Whether it was a quiet dinner at their favorite restaurant or a simple walk in the park, These moments reminded them of the bond they had built over the years. One weekend, Ethan surprised Sophia with a trip to the cabin where they had spent their honeymoon. As they sat by the fireplace, sipping wine and sharing stories, Sophia felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. "Do you remember the first time we came here?" Ethan asked, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "How could I forget? You got lost on the way and refused to ask for directions," Sophia teased. Ethan laughed, a genuine, hearty sound that made her heart flutter. "And you still married me. Guess I must have done something right." Sophia leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "You did a lot of things right, Ethan, and I'm sorry I ever doubted that." He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "We're not perfect, Soph, but we're worth fighting for." Lila was the first to notice the changes in her parents. "You guys smile a lot more now," she said one morning over breakfast, her tone matter of fact. Sophia and Ethan exchanged a glance, then laughed. "Well, we have a lot to smile about," Ethan said, ruffling Lila's hair. The changes weren't just on the surface. Sophia and Ethan had learned to prioritize their family in ways they hadn't before. They made time for game nights, family outings, and quiet evenings at home. Even when work threatened to intrude, they set boundaries to ensure it didn't. One evening, as they sat together watching Lila perform an impromptu dance routine in the living room, Sophia felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had been through so much, but they had come out stronger. Their family wasn't perfect, but it was whole. Forgiveness wasn't a single act, it was a journey. There were still moments of doubt, still scars that hadn't fully healed. But Sophia and Ethan faced these challenges together, leaning on each other when the weight felt too heavy to bear alone. One evening, as they stood on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan turned to Sophia and said, "I forgive you." Tears filled her eyes. "I forgive you too." They stood in silence for a long time, holding hands as the first stars appeared in the sky. In that moment, Sophia knew that forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about choosing to move forward. Together, years later, Sophia would look back on that chapter of her life with a mix of regret and gratitude. Regret for the pain she had caused, but gratitude for the lessons it had taught her. She and Ethan had built something stronger than the marriage they had before. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, grounded in honesty and mutual respect. And that, Sophia realized, was all she had ever wanted. As she watched Ethan and Lila laughing together in the backyard, Sophia felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. They had weathered the storm. And though the journey had been painful, it had been worth it. Because love wasn't about never making mistakes. It was about finding the courage to make things right. A year after the most challenging time in their marriage, Sophia received an email from her company. She had been selected for a leadership program that included an international project. It was a prestigious opportunity, but it required travel for 3 months, a decision that immediately filled her with unease. That evening, as they sat together after dinner, she brought it up with Ethan. "They want me to lead a project overseas," Sophia said, her voice cautious. "It's a big opportunity, but it means being away for a while." Ethan leaned back in his chair, considering her words. "How long is a while?" 3 months. He raised an eyebrow, but his tone was calm. "And how do you feel about it?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "Part of me wants to take it, but part of me is scared it'll put too much strain on us. After everything we've been through." Ethan reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Soph, I don't want you to give up your dreams because of fear. We've worked hard to get to where we are. If this is something you want, we'll make it work." Her heart swelled with gratitude. For the first time in years, she felt supported in a way that reminded her of why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. Sophia took the opportunity, and the months that followed became a test of the progress they had made as a couple. With daily video calls and frequent messages, they stayed connected despite the distance. Unlike before, their communication was open and honest, each making an effort to share their thoughts and feelings. Lila, though sad to see her mother leave, quickly adapted, creating colorful countdown calendars and saving up stories to share during their calls. Ethan stepped into a more active parenting role, surprising even himself with how much he enjoyed it. During one of their calls, Sophia said, "You're really doing an amazing job with Lila. She keeps telling me how much fun you two are having." Ethan smiled. "She's pretty great, but I think she gets that from her mom." Sophia laughed. A warm, genuine sound. "I miss you. I miss you too," he replied. "But we're doing okay, aren't we?" "We are," she said, her voice filled with hope. When Sophia returned, the reunion was bittersweet. Lila ran into her arms at the airport, babbling about all the things she wanted to show her, while Ethan stood back, his smile reserved but warm. On the drive home, Sophia noticed the subtle changes in Ethan. He seemed more relaxed, more present, as if the time apart had given him a new perspective. That night, as they lay in bed, Ethan said, "You know, I've realized something while you were gone." "What's that?" Sophia asked, turning to face him. "I've spent so much of my life thinking I had to carry everything on my own shoulders. But the truth is, we're a team. I don't want to lose sight of that again." Sophia reached for his hand, her chest tightening with emotion. "Neither do I." The months that followed were some of the happiest of their lives. They had learned to balance their individual needs with their shared responsibilities, creating a partnership that felt equal and fulfilling. Sophia began mentoring younger women at her company, sharing the lessons she had learned about balancing career and family. Ethan, inspired by his own growth, started volunteering at a local community center, teaching construction skills to underprivileged youth. Their family became a well-oiled machine, with Lila thriving in school and constantly surrounded by the love and attention of her parents. They weren't perfect, there were still occasional arguments and moments of frustration, but they faced these challenges with a newfound sense of unity. One quiet afternoon, while cleaning out old files, Sophia stumbled upon an envelope containing the printed messages she had exchanged with Adrian. She had kept them as a reminder of the mistakes she never wanted to repeat. But now, holding them in her hands, she realized they no longer held power over her. When Ethan came home, she handed him the envelope. "I found these today," she said. "I don't need them anymore." He opened the envelope, his expression unreadable as he scanned the messages. Finally, he looked up at her, his gaze soft. "Thank you for showing me this. But I think it's time we let it go." Together, they burned the messages in the fireplace, watching as the paper curled into ash. It felt like closing a chapter they had both outgrown, a symbolic release of the pain that had once threatened to consume them. For their 10th wedding anniversary, Ethan surprised Sophia with a weekend getaway to the same cabin where they had rekindled their love the year before. This time, the air was light with joy rather than heavy with unresolved pain. Over dinner, Ethan raised a glass of wine. "To us," he said, "to everything we've been through, and everything we've built together." Sophia clinked her glass against his, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "To us." They spent the weekend reminiscing about their journey, celebrating the resilience of their love, and dreaming about the future they would continue to build. Years later, as Lila prepared to leave for college, Sophia and Ethan stood together in the doorway of their home, watching her drive away. "She's going to do amazing things," Sophia said, her voice tinged with pride and sadness. "She gets that from you," Ethan replied, slipping an arm around her waist. Sophia leaned into him, her heart full. They had faced the darkest moments of their marriage and emerged stronger, bound by a love that had weathered the storms of life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they stood in the quiet of their home, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because love, they had learned, wasn't about perfection, it was about persistence, forgiveness, and the willingness to grow together.